Welcome back. Nearly 16 months of conflict, of bloodshed, millions displaced, thousands killed, damages, demolition, destruction. When this is going to end? The Russian-Ukrainian struggle is not only affecting the West, is not only affecting Europe, but it's really affecting the whole world. With food insecurity, with energy crisis, with supply chain crisis also, it's not a problem, it's a real disastrous issue. There was an African initiative to put an end and to reach a peaceful settlement for this struggle. And there was important meetings, whether in Kiev or in Moscow. On behalf of President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, Prime Minister Dr. Mustafa Madbouli was included in the African initiative, and heading the Egyptian delegation included under this umbrella the African Peace Initiative to end the conflict or the war between Ukraine and Russia. To shed more light on this and the importance of this initiative, we are very much delighted to have with us via phone Dr. Hassan Wagih, Professor of International Relations. Thank you very much for being with us, sir, and a very good morning.
Good morning to you.
Sir, let's talk or let's dive immediately into the importance of this African Peace Initiative.
Yes, this initiative is extremely needed, actually, when it comes from a collective effort representing the continent of Africa, which was really impacted severely by the crisis. So we can consider the delegation of the African initiative is not like mediators only. They are not only mediators. They are managing their very own crisis. Africa is suffering a lot from what happened due to the war between Ukraine and Russia.
But sir, one of the important answers of Russian President Vladimir Putin in their meetings in St. Petersburg, he said something which I think we should stop at, to discuss at least, or to analyze. He said that all the grain deals or all the grain exports, the Ukrainian grain, of course, which was exported from the Black Sea, it did not benefit you that much as African leaders or African peoples, but it went to the wealthy countries, so it's not the issue. How we can answer this, and is this true? I mean, on the ground?
Actually, when it comes to grain problem, yes, Africa is suffering. The most suffering entity in the world is all of African countries. More than 70% of their needs are from Russia and from Ukraine. And I think that, yes, when it comes to this dimension, let me say something very important. When I analyzed also the statements of the African delegates, I found that they are really trying to manage their own crisis. It's not only mediation, and it is not a matter of who said what, when, and how outside of Africa only, but inside Africa. Yes, the most important basket for that would feed the entire world. So what I like in this initiative is that all the presidents and all the delegates became very keen to have self-sufficiency and to draw a lesson from the, not to listen to someone else, but to listen to the sound minds and cancel out all conflicts in Africa that impeded it not only to feed its people, but to feed the entire world.
Yeah.
And
sir, since you are wearing two hats, being a professor of international relations and linguistics, this is to lead me to analyze even the wording of the statements of all those who addressed the gatherings, whether in Kiev or in Moscow. When Russian President Vladimir Putin welcomed the African leaders, he also said that he welcomed the balanced way or the balanced vision the African leaders were looking at the conflict. This balance or this way to address or to describe the African initiative, is it indicating something or saying that Vladimir Putin is going to listen to what the African leaders are including into the 10 points declaration or announcements they had in mind or they had with them when they met him in St. Petersburg?
Yes. I think one of the most important things when it comes to the linguistics of the crisis, as you mentioned, yes, there are so many aspects to be addressed. One of that, yes, Vladimir Putin said he welcomed and he appreciated the well-balanced views of the African delegate and the African initiative. I think this balance is very needed because Africa also has a strategic relationship with all parties involved. But let me return to something very interesting about the reality of the crisis. The reality of the crisis from a linguistic point of view is that, oh, yes, you can listen to Joe Biden, to Vladimir Putin, to Zelensky. Yes, all the political discourse is there. But who is managing the crisis? We used to have in crisis management terms like crisis management team, task force. You know, now there is a new term is being used, tigers, tiger teams. Tiger teams in the White House, tiger teams wherever. The term tiger teams for managing the crisis needs some contemplation. Actually, when you were saying crisis management team, it was neutral. But tiger team relates to a little bit of tough, competitive situation and zero-sum game, more or less zero-sum game in reality. And this is, yes, this term is being used in companies also, but it is not that mild. It is also based on zero-sum mentality. And tiger teams and tigers are very, even in Zodiac linguistics, you can find he's determined, confident, courage is good qualities, but he's also stubborn, competitive, easy to be provoked, overindulgent, never take a step back. This would tell you how difficult managing this crisis with its three scenarios. You know, we have three scenarios for this crisis. The scenario that Russia will achieve victory, this is scenario number one. Or the scenario that Ukraine, and actually we are not Ukraine. We are not talking about Ukraine.
We are talking about Ukraine and its allies, or the West. And because, now, yes, and the third?
Yeah, the third is a stalemate, that we're still in this situation for a long period of time.
But this cannot last forever,
exhausting
sir.
Everybody and exhausting the whole world, yes.
But this is going to lead me to describe the whole issue or to analyze the whole issue as a show of strength, because many political analysts are saying now it's the stubbornness of the Western leaders. It's the stubbornness of Vladimir Putin in front of the allies who are trying to help Ukraine with everything. Britain, for example, yesterday said that they are going to continue with supplying Ukraine with cyber defense. And this is another issue, in addition, of course, to the finance, in addition to the military equipment from Germany. Canada followed suit. I mean, this is to say that this is going to continue just to show who is going first to say, no, enough is enough. I'm going to give up. I'm going to say goodbye to war and disputes and return back to peaceful resolutions and to peaceful solutions. What, in your opinion, how this is going to reach an end?
Yeah, of course, what you said is quite true when it comes to managing and solving this crisis and put an end to it. But let me elaborate further on these three scenarios and to see the drawbacks and the advantages of each one. They say, analysts all over the world, that they call it first the West and Russia. They do not say Ukraine, Russia. And that is really a super game. Yes, the West is very involved, extremely involved, and clearly and in the apparent way. So let us say if Russia achieved victory, yes, it will be for them a threat, and it will be a threat for other European countries, and business will never be back as usual, and it will develop into other crisis right. This is number one. Scenario number two, if the West, Ukraine with the help of the West, had the upper hand and requested that Russia should withdraw and should go for negotiation, they will take Ukraine as a NATO country. They will consider it. Now Joe Biden is saying, no, we are not going to do this step. But if they improve their situation in Ukraine, they will be a NATO country. And this will also continue to be problematic. And also, look at that, they are talking about the South Global Alliance with the Russians. Here, the balanced situation is extremely important because when the crisis develops into other stages, the global balance with the global South, which is many countries that support the Russians, will also be under fire somewhere, somehow. This is a problem of this dangerous crisis. So I welcome the African initiative for that reason. And if it's becoming the third scenario, which is a stalemate. Yes, it is exhausting, and we are going into deeper levels of recession, inflation now.
Of inflation, of food insecurity, of energy crisis, you name it.
Yeah, hopefully not. Hopefully not.
But sir, since you were mentioning those scenarios, and you mentioned the allies of both sides, this is going to lead us again to the term of Cold War. And using this term is really frightening. And to have China on one hand supporting Russia and the West led by the United States supporting Ukraine, is this going to lead the world to another harsh, tough era of real Cold War, far from the softened way of, or not to use this term in many occasions? Now we are going to use it again in a bolder manner regarding our description of the situation worldwide?
Yes, unfortunately, we are in a state of very clear cold divided world, and Cold War and the divided world. And I hope that this kind of initiative that we are talking about is trying to bring some balance. It's not only the African initiative. Also, the China triggered another initiative, and it's also very important. And I think that the role of the United Nations should be different, should be much more activating. And if you can see that, by the way, if you look at the assertion of Henry Kissinger as a veteran crisis manager who really went for the Cold War was in his era, and he was successful in at the end to bring peace in the Middle East and to bring reconciliation with China and with other powers of the world, because ultimately reasonable people other than the tigers would consider that the win-win and to finish off these losses that the whole world is suffering from is a success for everyone. And I think
war should have an end. War should not continue this way.
And I think the United Nations should play another role to reframe the issue.
There is a global peace summit Ukraine is going to host, is preparing to host, and let's cross our fingers and pray to God Almighty that it's going to be a turning point and to turn this page of war and to